First item on our agenda today is public comment period. And so this is public comment on any items that are not currently on the agenda. Any members of the public are welcome to come up and address the committee. Seeing none, we will start with our consent calendar. And first we have the minutes from item A1. I guess we'd like to ask if anyone has any comments on that, any corrections to A1.
I move we approve the minutes as stated.
Okay. Do you have a second?
I'll second it.
I make a motion that we approve the minutes as shown.
I will second that.
Okay. Do we have ayes, please? Do we have a vote?
So are we for moving forward, are we doing the meeting a little differently than normal? Are you going to be running the meeting?
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. You're doing a great job, so I was just letting you go.
It's all yours. Sorry.
Yeah.
No.
You can have it.
It's all yours.
And everything that goes with it.
Exactly. Well, he has all that. He gets all that. Okay, so
I'm glad I was the only one caught by surprise.
It's the name plaque. I got a little out of control when I saw it.
Yeah, it went to your head
Sorry
there. Too funny. All right, well, we have a motion and a second, so all in favor of votes.
Aye.
Aye. None opposed. Motion carries unanimously. Item 2, A2, is a water reclamation facility funding update. Do we have any update from that subcommittee, I suppose?
No, it's in the agenda, John.
Oh, I'm sorry. Item A2 is from staff with a staff report. So, Mike, now see how I was stealing your show.
It's all right.
Now you can have the
okay.
mic back.
It's okay. That's fair. So I'd like to give an update. This is, we've received an update from Kestrel Consulting on some of the various loans and grants that they're tracking. We've submitted, as you all know, we've submitted an application to the State Water Board for the $75,000 planning grant. And this grant, the city will contribute a matching amount of $75,000. This is for development of the master reclamation plan. The next step is the city is Kestrel Consulting began last week on working on the planning loan application for state revolving loan fund, and they started that effort last week. So that is already underway. The state revolving planning loans, that process will take about 2 months to get that application together and submit it. It's a very, very low interest loan for agencies. I think it's in the neighborhood of around 1%, somewhere in that neighborhood right now. It tends to be very low interest. So we are working on that application, and we're targeting end of November or beginning of December to submit that to the state. The other funding opportunities are summarized in a table in the back of the report from Kestrel. And at this point, what they've done is they've identified a variety of funding programs that have been traditionally available for similar projects and to the wharf, and also for desalination and groundwater cleanup and other related opportunities or projects. And at this time, you'll note that they have both planning and we've noted in the table that many of these loans and grants are for both planning and construction. And as we have better project definition moving forward through facility master plan, development of the master reclamation plan, then Kestrel will be working together to identify the best opportunities to fund the best project for Morro Bay. And at this point, I'll open to any questions that the committee has or any discussion items related to funding opportunities.
Go ahead, Dale. Sorry.
With the funding opportunities and the grants received, is that going to reduce the rates to the consumer, the amount of money?
The opportunities we're currently looking at, and Rob directed the development of the rate study. Rob, in terms of financing for the rate study for WARF, was SRF funding assumed on that?
So in the rate analysis that Barber Wells performed, they assumed loan funding for the project. They didn't assume any grant funding. So any grant funding would offset the costs. And next week we're due the actual rate model from the finance consultant, so we can plug new numbers in as they're available to see what rate implications, thank you, Mr. Woodson, implications that any grants or cost changes may have to the rates. But currently the project is 100% funded with rates, and it's assuming an SRF loan.
One more thing. I want to wish Kay a happy birthday. She says she's 29, but
I had a quick question. Has Kestrel given you any idea what we could reasonably expect out of the grant side of the funding aspects? I mean, like a rough number of what you could honestly expect at the end of the day?
Well, that's a good question, and that's always one of the challenges when you're pursuing grants for a project. What Kestrel's recommendation to us has been, based on their experience and also in our own experience, is you define the best project first, and then you go pursue grants and loans that are targeted for that best project. So in their view, what they've basically said for now, it all depends on what we come up with through Master Reclamation Plan, through the Facility Master Plan, that will determine what opportunities are out there. The target percentage, is it going to pay for 50 or 60% of a project? Highly unlikely. Is it a reasonable goal to receive 10% funding on a major project of this nature when you're not a disadvantaged community or special status community? That might be a more reasonable expectation. But all these programs and projects are different.
Because I assume the loan side of it's a lot easier,
yes,
not to crack, so to speak, as opposed to the grant money. And I know we're not a disadvantaged community, and I'm kind of glad to hear Rob said that when they did the Barber Wells report, they didn't include any grant money, because I could see at the end of the day that's going to be a tough thing to collect on if we get 10%.
Yes, sir. And I wouldn't want to hang our hat on anything right now until we have better project definition and can stack up the opportunities with the project.
Okay, thank you.
I think what Monica said in her presentation is 10% would probably be typical. 20% would be pushing it for a project of this nature. So somewhere between 10 and 20% projects of this nature can be grant competitive.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
In regards to the water reclamation plan and the $150,000, is that are you going to hire a consultant to actually pull together the different pieces for the water reclamation plan, or is that something how's that money going to be spent?
We've actually already hired that consultant. It was part of the original scope of work for project management. Okay. So this is this would be offsetting costs that we'd already planned on spending.
Okay.
Yeah, and Mike and Rob, the letter that Kestrel sent you, it spoke to waiting on a certification of this form that they have to use. Part of this, I guess it was a certification, AB 1420 compliance form. Do we have any idea how long that might be before they get off that? I guess that's what's hanging this application from moving through.
Right, and the latest I can say, there's been discussion between DWR and city staff just to clarify some of the questions they had. The AB 1420 compliance forms address the city's water conservation program, and the city provides evidence that they've spent so much level of effort on different conservation measures. They had some questions. City responded. At this time, we don't know of any other questions. The review time for this particular grant application could be anywhere in the, say, 8 to 12 week range is typical.
But are we still waiting for somebody to approve some form that they can then move forward with the application process?
That included in that timeline is the DWR review. So that's integral to the state board review process. So we don't know we have not heard confirmation that DWR is satisfied with the AB 1420, but we should have an update later this week.
One other question is it possible for us to see a copy of this application? Can it be posted on the website for the water reclamation facility? Is that something that the public can see, we can see?
Yes.
Thank you. That's all.
Keep on moving down. Valerie, did you have a question?
I guess just looking at the schedule, 8 to 12 weeks could push your schedule deadline out for the for the master reclamation plan then, at least with particular schedule I'm looking at. So for this review process.
Yep, understood. And so the current plan is if we receive the grants in the December timeframe and we can begin master reclamation plan in January, that would actually put us on track. That might be an older schedule. We're planning to update the schedule as soon as we have the program management software up and running, because that's going to be integral to that program. So we've been keeping a schedule off to the side, and one of the decision points is going to be whether we're updating there or updating our own. So at this point, I can say the critical path item really is facility master plan, and getting that done in January we're on schedule with all the other items at this time.
No questions? Okay, to my right, any questions or comments for this item?
Okay, I just had a few comments. First of all, I thought it was really well written. It's a very good description of the project funding opportunities. My questions were, what is the financial security package and what does this entail? It's on page 2 under next steps for loans.
Okay. The financial security package, it's a series of forms and some accounting information that the city will provide the state. And Kestrel's already begun working with the city finance department to pull some of that information together, but it basically confirms that the city can pay back the planning loan.
Okay.
That's really the purpose of it.
Thank you. And then finally, when will when's the FMP going to be completed? Because, I mean, I understand you said that one of the assumptions is we're going to wait until it's completed and then go after grants, but I'm just wondering, why would we wait before submitting a grant application?
One purpose is the grant applications, particularly for construction, have a shelf life.
Okay.
And so if you pursue a grant application now, but you don't have the project description all together and complete, then you won't be competitive for it. And those programs can change over time. So what we've asked Kestrel to do is continue tracking, and we talk to Kestrel weekly, literally. And our direction to them has been, we keep telling you where we're at, and you tell us when's the trigger point to fill out the application, because we want to make sure we fill it out as early as possible. One of the things they've told us is, based on where we are in the process, we're really too early to pursue some of these grants. There are two items, the facility master plan, and then also the reuse opportunities from the master reclamation plan need to be developed as well before we can pursue some of the construction grants. So we're we're working with them to identify when's the earliest that we can submit.
Okay, so it's not really possible to have sort of like a preliminary application and then fill in the details later on?
The recommendation has been not to do that for these programs because there is quite a bit of competition for them. And if you submit an incomplete application and you're not ready to move on a project, you're going to be competing against agencies that are.
All right, thank you.
Yep, thank you.
I want to look at a bigger picture here. On your facilities master plan, how big is your plant? A lot of people are asking me, how big is your plant? How big are you building the plant? How many MGDs?
MGDs. So currently the plant would be sized for only City of Morro Bay.
What is that number?
So the average day demands, we're actually working through those flows and loadings right now, but it's in the 1 to 1.1 range.
So you're designing a plant for 1 MGD?
Approximately.
Okay. The other question is...
And the peak out, just to clarify, the peak flow, so peak hour flow is going to be in the 6 to 7.
Yeah, that's MGD what it is right now. Yeah. Okay. Now, once again, we're looking at water reclamation ready, right? Is that what we're doing with this FMP and all this other stuff?
Well, phase 1 looks at the phase 1 construction looks at a reclamation ready plant. What Black and Veatch is looking at in facility master plan is a plant that will meet a variety of reuse opportunities in the future. So they're looking at all the on-site requirements for groundwater recharge. Not that groundwater recharge would occur right there, but that the treatment facility for groundwater recharge would be located at that location. So they're developing costs for a range of treatment alternatives, all the way from tertiary with disinfection, which is kind of the minimum level of quality.
That's 40 years old, basically.
Up through salts removal for avocados, salts removal for groundwater recharge, and those other and in addition, they're also looking at, as an alternative, what direct potable reuse would look like.
Okay.
So they're looking at a suite of alternatives for the plant.
Here's my issue with this. I don't know how many of you have been involved in the Los Osos project back in 24, 25, 26, 27 during that time. I know you were involved in there. Los Osos is not a model that we should look up and say, oh, we got the most expensive sewer plant, and that's the bar that we set. I went to Sacramento last week and learned basically Prop 1 funding. The reason why we're not getting Prop 1 funding is because we're still dinking around trying to figure out what we're going to do. We don't know how big to make the plant. We're still behind the wave. I've said this before. We're behind the wave here. 1.1 with a 6-hour MGD, that's not going to cut it with what's happening with regards to population, with regards to tourism, with regards to, you just take the example of what happened in Santa Barbara when they had the oil spill. Our beaches were packed. Now, I know for a fact there's no way you can treat all that sewage, Bruce, and that had to be dumped, okay? You had to, let me put it this way, primarily treated mix, for sure. I know that for a fact. So I'm looking at what we're doing here is we are not forward thinking. This project has been going on for a while. We missed an opportunity of ARRA grants way back when it was going to be upgraded. We missed an opportunity of Prop 84 money. What I found out, there was like $9 billion before, now there's only about $20 million left. And now we got a Prop 1 money that's available. It is a simple letter of intent that could be submitted in a month, this month sometime, a letter of intent. But you got to have a project. And one of those things in the project they're looking at, it has to deal with emerging issues. And one of the biggest emerging issues is greenhouse gases. If you're not dealing with that, you're not going to get anything. I beg to differ with this assumption that we can only get 10%. I think we can get 50%. I think we could be a pilot for California on how things can get done. We're doing a managed retreat. We need to get on, we need to pick a project, and we need to pick a technology, and we need to get a move on it. This facilities master plan, you can almost take the same one we did that's on the beach over here, move it to another location, and then do the same thing if you use the same technology. Now, as an engineer, okay, you're an engineer. When you build something, if you build something with parameters that says, you know what, we're going to start with this, we're going to end with full reclamated water, okay? You can build a machine, basically, that can handle that. Having potable water or water reuse, what a wonderful problem for the city to have is we got to have water available for people, for farms, for whatever. There's not going to be a problem there. But the direction that I see all this going is we're going for outreach, we're planning, that we don't have even parameters on what we're planning for. And then what the parameters that we have are not right. 1.1 isn't going to do it. 6 MGD in 1 hour, that's not going to cut it. We don't have the regional board gave us a waiver. We're not going to have that forever, okay? And so we need to get a project thing, and then we can get the money. The money's available. This Prop 1 money is not that hard to get. If you have the right, you have to put the parameters in there. Okay? And it's like there's a lot of people that are frustrated with this, including myself, that have been involved in this for a long time. We know the history. Now, the only winners in Los Osos was a couple of businesses. Okay? One of them is a partner in this build team. And then the other one is the county. The county got the water. Okay? We keep moving in this direction. This is a city. We should be able to take care of our resources. And when we do that, we can keep them. And
thanks, Richard.
The thing is we got to start, we can have these discussions. People discuss things forever.
Well, I agree with you on that point, but looking at the list here, a lot of these Prop 1 programs are still in guideline development, so they're not even available right now, and I'm happy to see they're on the list and that we have Kestrel who can keep an eye on them. And a year ago at this time, we didn't even have Prop 1. So, I heard you say that we missed out on ARA. We're here poised to capitalize on Prop 1, and I trust our consultant, our staff will look at that and do the best they can. Are there any comments from the public before we wrap this item up? How often are we going to get reports from Kestrel on funding? Is this going to be a quarterly item, or?
We haven't specified a frequency. We think a lot of it depends on where we are in the process. What I would suggest is that we get one towards the end of the year, so probably or December or January, somewhere in that time frame, because we'll be closer to the completion of the facility master plan, have better project definition on the site, know a little more about hydrogeology, so that might be a good point to get an update. So on a quarterly basis might make sense right now. Okay.
And I'm hoping you can follow up with her. I didn't see it in her report, but principal forgiveness or interest rate reductions from SRF program I didn't see it discussed. And could you please follow up with her on how she feels we're poised for either of those programs, and if that will be part of the application packet?
Yes. And one thing I'd like to do too, with your permission, is when I have questions like that answered, what I'll probably do is not wait for the next WRFCAC meeting. You'll start to see more things directly from us in between, just so that you have a chance to digest them as we're learning them. So that could be one of that'll be a question we'll pose to Kestrel and get an answer back for you.
Okay, thank you. Mm-hmm. Moving on to item A2, water reclamation facility, A3, water reclamation facility status report. I think this is you again, Mike?
Yes.
All right.
So we've got a fairly brief update because some of the more immediate items will be discussed in greater detail today. We've negotiated the scope and budget for the CEQA work, CEQA and NEPA Consulting with Environmental Science Associates. We'll discuss that in agenda item C1. We've evaluated 5 program management software options with city staff. attended software demonstrations, and working on a detailed quote from the top-ranked vendor. We've submitted the application for the planning grant to State Board. One thing I did want to point out about that planning grant is that planning grant is actually from Prop 1 money. So Prop 1 is we're pursuing that aggressively, and that money is actually from Prop 1. We've initiated the application process for the Clean Water State Revolving Fund planning loan, presented the draft program outreach plan at the September council meeting, and had conference calls and reviewed some progress reports from our facility master plan. And then we've received a draft survey from our surveyor along Highway 41 and Atascadero Road and the Rancho Colina site for use by the facility master plan team and the other planning consultants. So we've received a draft survey yesterday that we're reviewing. So the near-term schedule we have is the completion of the survey and base map I mentioned, council award, council consideration and possible award of the CEQA and NEPA contract on October the 13th. We anticipate issuing the notice to proceed to ESA later that week. Technical Workshop 1 on project delivery alternatives is on the 17th, on the Saturday. Community Workshop 1, the date is to be determined on that, but that's going to be a facility master plan overview and opportunity for community input. We're tentatively looking towards the end of October or 1st of November. John will talk a little more about that later. And then Technical Workshop number 2 is liquid treatment technologies, and that's we're proposing that as a joint WRFCAC and council study session on the 17th of November. And we have a summary of the current project expenses to date and estimated costs on the next page as an attachment. And so we'll try to answer any questions you may have on those items.
Start down at the left again, Dale, if you have any questions.
No.
Okay.
Yeah, Mike, on your cost summary down below under Black and Veatch, is the way I understand we're probably about halfway through the 6-month schedule they gave us, yet there's been no billing, I guess, by them. So are they doing something, and do we expect billing, or where are we as far as our progress goes? We're 50% through the schedule they gave us. Where are we?
So we've received the first invoice, and we need to review that. So we just have the one invoice in. In terms of percent completion, based on some of the interim deliverables and discussions we've had, they're putting a lot together in order to be able to come to you. One of the items we'll discuss later is our next WRFCAC meeting, and we wanted to propose October the 20th for that, because remember at the last meeting we discussed having 2 in October, 2 in November. So they are going to pull together a presentation for you at that next meeting, give you a status update on where they're at, and we'll also have deliverables, roughly the say 40% level deliverable on facility master plan for you all to review. That doesn't mean that they're committed to the January schedule, so everything's on track with that. And as of this point, they're on schedule. So you'll be seeing a lot from Black and Veatch through October and November as they come and present different parts of facility master plan to get your input and community input. So the objective would be on the 20th they come and present status of the master plan, bring deliverables, and then you get a chance before the first meeting in November to review them and come back with comments or suggestions. Yes.
Anyone else on my left here? Bob or Valerie? Or Bill, excuse me.
Yeah, I've got a question. Fergo, it looks like they've got some money left. I'm looking at the money spent on various contracts down in the middle. And the last time we heard from Fergo was the percolation study, and we were talking about expansive soil, and we were talking about drilling, and we were talking about leach fields and the practicality or the feasibility of any, and recharging of the aquifers for the Morrow wells. Do we have any further information on that?
Yes, they're on to phase 2 of their work, which includes a collection of well records from DWR for the Morrow Valley in order to determine where the best opportunities might be for groundwater recharge. So they've made that request to DWR. We're expecting that they'll get that data by the end of this month or early November. And they have about a 3 or 4 week turnaround after that to give us some kind of a digestion of that information.
Are you optimistic that you're going to find some kind of a favorable site somewhere down there in the valley that is probably removed from the site, the facility site, but it's going to be down in the valley somewhere, I would assume?
Well, I'd say for one thing, engineers are never optimistic. That's not our nature, so that's number one. But I would say that the fact that we have good producing wells in the lower part of the aquifer, the city wells, suggests that there may be opportunities for recharge in the groundwater basin.
So maybe you would have to go to wells rather than leach fields or something similar to that?
That's a common approach for groundwater recharge, and that's something that Fugro will.
And so we will know more maybe next month, huh?
We should know more about, I would say, the second meeting in November. I'll be able to give you an update on where they are and what they've found. The first step really is to take existing well log information and then determine where the best opportunities might be, and then that has to be followed with field work. We wouldn't have an opportunity to be through field work by then, but we may have a better understanding. We should have a better understanding of the aquifer itself and where the opportunities might be.
Okay. And the second question, Mike, you inferred that you're moving along or getting close to choosing a control software that would give you a more responsive, enhanced, state-of-the-art schedule cost control mechanism. Do you have anything to report on that?
So what I'll say is we evaluated the 5 vendors. We found one that was that seemed to suit all the program needs, in addition to many of these the city's capital improvement needs as well. So it seemed to make a lot of sense. And so we've requested a quote from that vendor, and we're working on a detailed list of questions for them to see if really it is the right fit. So at this point, that's kind of where we are. One of the purpose of the program, this program or project management software, is to improve coordination and communication with all the different consultants working on it. Yeah. It's to provide one repository for documents. Yeah. It's to track who's in a document, who's out, who's made comments. Mm-hmm. And so on major programs, when you're in the $30, $40, $50 million plus range, the intention is really to save staff time and prevent duplication of documents or duplication of notes and that sort of thing. Yeah. And so with that, we're expecting, there'll be some interface with our scheduling capability, and there'll be an interface with our
But you're pursuing this
management
software, and it looks like you're going to get one and you're going to implement it.
Yes, sir. In fact, we should have, I would say staff will probably have a recommendation, in the next couple of weeks. We're pretty close to moving forward on that.
Thanks. Yeah. Anybody on the right have any questions or comments?
I just had some minor suggestions. Mm-hmm. So on the budget, I would suggest providing a one-line description of the work performed for each of the contract amendments. And I'd add a line for ESA and proposed contract amount. That was $356,578.
Okay.
And then I have a question. What were the preliminary results of the mapping and survey done along Highway 41? Can you talk about that?
Yeah, so we have several levels of survey that went on. First was really a topographical and property survey. So that's the one that that I've been working on, and we've got the draft of that in, and then John can speak to the other biological and cultural surveys that are underway. So, John, do you want to speak to those?
Yeah, the status on the existing ongoing biological and cultural surveys, we should have draft or better than draft reports done probably within the next 3 or 4 weeks, or even less than that. We have preliminary results in. What we want to do is dovetail their work with the work if ESA is going to be hired to do the CEQA NEPA document with them, so we're not going to duplicate the work they've done, just use their work and peer review it and make sure it works. But we don't have the results in yet at this point.
Did you have a comment? Question?
Yes, I had a question in reference to Ginny's request on the adding the ESA. Mike, I see we have the 3 columns here, but I think it's a little bit difficult to track this to the overall budget. And I know we've had some discussion in the past that you may be working on another system. But rather than just add these amounts in and change, the 2.3 million bottom line, how can we track the budget performance? In other words, there was a comment that the proposed ESA agreement was in the budgeted amount, and I know we've seen some other figures before. How can we get this at a high level or financial dashboard or something that, from a finance standpoint, might make it a little easier to track where we are? Budget performance versus actuals is what I'm saying.
Yeah, that's a good point, and it's something that we've been discussing internally too. One of the things we looked at with these various program management software tools is we'd like to find an executive dashboard where the report's already set up and ready to go instead of recrafting one. That way we'd have real-time ability to be able to generate those easily. So what I'd like to be able to do is, when we have that up and running, is begin generating the updates from that. But what we can do for now is we've already discussed putting together kind of a budget status and cash flow update at the high level, and we'll provide that in addition to this on the next update.
Thank you.
Yep.
Richard, any comments down there? You're good? Okay. Any public comment on this item? Right, seeing none, this is also receive and file, so close this item and move on to A4, which is the upcoming outreach opportunities. Mike?
Okay.
Or John, excuse me.
I'll pass it over to John Rickenbach.
Okay, yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, what I'd like to do is bring the committee up to date on the upcoming outreach opportunities in the context of the report that was sent to the council on the 22nd, and you have a copy of it in your packet as well. We can fill in a few blanks that were somewhat vague on that and update that report too. The immediate first step that we just want to make you aware of and actually probably look for a little informal feedback from you is doing stakeholder interviews, such as we did a couple of years ago during the facilities site selection process. We are tentatively looking to hold those later next week, and we are the one reason we've held back a little bit, we wanted your input on that. One of the things that we're really looking at here, we're trying to get input on that's going to inform the facilities master plan, both in terms of specifics that we've heard from your group having to do with certain facilities or the timing or some are environmental issues, of course. But we also want to get a feel for the overall process and concerns that you might have, and cost issues, the whole gamut of issues from the community. We plan to do that 2 ways. One, we're going to hold a community workshop, but the interviews will be a place where we can focus that. We've targeted a list right now. It's about 70 or 80, 85 individuals. All of you are on that group as well. Many of you we interviewed previously. So we want to make sure that we get everybody's interest and try to schedule those interviews. And if we need to schedule more time for the interviews, we'll do that if there's a lot of interest in that. But tentatively, we're looking at doing that later next week. What we want to make sure is we're capturing the main groups that were representatives of the main groups. Obviously, everyone's a ratepayer who lives here. But the business interests, environmental groups, the potential reclaimed water users, which might be everybody depending on what happens, but could be the growers as well. We want to make sure they're represented. Neighbors, we want to make sure they're represented as well. So your feedback on key individuals or target groups, even if we've thought of them too, you might want to give us your thoughts there as well, and we'll make sure that they get informed and invited. The way we're going to conduct those interviews, very much like we did before, they'll be in groups, small groups probably, because if we have a lot of interest, we can't do everyone exactly one-on-one, but 1 on 2 or 3 sometimes, probably a half hour to an hour, depending on what it will take. And then we'll compile all that information and then relay it all to Black and Veatch and internally use that to help inform the process as we go. We do want to follow up with that with the community workshop. Tentatively, we're looking, as Mike said, at a larger workshop at the end of October. We're looking at trying to zero on October 29. I don't know if that's actually going to be the day, but it's going to be somewhere between there and the first week of November. We're really going to pose the same kind of questions to the community at large and provide another opportunity for more feedback. We want it now as Black and Veatch is developing what they're doing, so they have enough time to use that information in the draft version of the facility master plan, which schedule-wise, we're looking at probably a draft version of that sometime in December. We realize it's final, or at least it's going to be to the point where we can go forward with it in January. But we want to be able to have another workshop in December that says, well, here's what we heard, here's what Black and Veatch did with all your information, and now we want to make sure that we've captured your concerns. So playing it out, interviews in October, 14, 15, first workshop end of October, second workshop beginning of December, coinciding closely with when the draft FMP will be coming out. So that's the short version of the next input steps. Mike also mentioned the technical workshop that's coming up on October 17th about the delivery methods. There's the WRFCAC meeting on the 20th. Again, that'll be an update type of meeting. And then, of course, you'll be meeting again on November 3rd. And in that one, we're hopefully looking at reviewing the hydrogeologic study that Mike referred to, the FUGRO work, and an update on the schedule and the cash flow and so forth. And then looking at that joint technical workshop on November 17th with you and the City Council, which will be focused on presenting liquid treatment technology. So obviously there's a lot of things we're going to be doing in the next month on the outreach side of things. And that doesn't even count the informal work we'll be doing behind the scenes, dealing with the public agencies, understanding the permit needs depending on how we go forward, getting ESA, if they are hired to do this, they'll be helping us outline what we need to do to go forward on the CEQA and NEPA processes. That's the short version, and any questions you might have, happy to answer them.
Go for it, Dale.
Have you contacted Ag or anything yet to let us know what's going on for a workshop or the interviews next week?
Everybody is going to be getting an email probably later today. When you say Ag, you mean individuals in the Ag community, or what's your question?
Yeah, the individuals or a group of us together.
Sure, yes, that would be the idea. In fact, if you want to give me specifics on people beyond those we tried to reach out to before, I want to reach out to them as well so we capture them in the invites. That's one of the reasons I'm asking your input, to make sure we capture individuals or groups that we want to target for the interviews.
Okay.
So yeah, but yes, the invites will be going out today, and hopefully we'll get responses soon. And then if we need more time because people can't get their schedules together, we'll do that. We just want to make sure we do get the interviews in soon enough.
Okay, great.
Moving down the line.
Yeah, and on that Ag group that we just spoke of, and you're going to send out this email, you might, I don't know, shorten it by asking if somebody would like to represent them all, rather than have them all come. I mean, Dale's already here. But that might speed up the process, because you got so many people you want to interview in 2 days. I don't know how, if there's enough hours in those 2 days to do that. So getting a representative right off the bat for this group would really probably speed that up.
And we'll do that. I think that's what we found before when we reached out to groups that had a lot of individuals. We found a lot of people didn't have time or weren't interested. And it did boil down, sometimes we had 2 or 3 individuals who represented a group. What we'd like to do is when we get the feedback is to group those. So if there's 2 or 3 in the ag community, we'll try to focus them together, and that'll be more efficient. Yes.
Valerie or Bill, any comments on this item? Going on down the line? None? Okay. Any members of the public wish to comment on our public outreach plan? Nope. Well, thank you for putting this together. It's definitely detailed and incorporates a lot of our comments from the last meeting, so thank you very much. With that, we're going to move on to old business, B1, which is updates from our subcommittees, if they have any updates from the last meeting. So finance, you're first on the list. Any update from this last month? Over here.
I just had a couple of announcements. So there's going to be a webcast on October 15th on implementing low-cost modifications to improve nutrient reduction at wastewater treatment plants, and I will give I'll give you the information on that. Anyway, for people that are listening, the bottom line for this is that EPA's draft report showcases a number of communities that were able to achieve better nutrient treatment at wastewater treatment plants through relatively low-cost modifications without requiring costly infrastructure upgrades. And basically, they go on to say that nutrient discharge levels in 12 case study plants were reduced by about 20 to 70%. So I think this is something that may be of interest to us. And then the second announcement I wanted to make was that EPA's Water Infrastructure and Resiliency Finance Center has just launched a new website. And again, I will be providing Mike information on that. So that's it.
Thank you. Environmental, do you have any comments on?
No, we have nothing.
Okay. And engineering?
None for me, but Dale had something he wished to add.
Yeah, I just received the groundwater quality characterization report from Central Coast Groundwater Coalition that includes Morro Valley, Troro Valley, Santa Maria, and Paso Robles. So that's out. So if anybody's interested on nitrate levels and what's in the wells.
When you say out, is it on the web somewhere?
You know, I had to sign up and get a password because I'm part of the coalition, so I don't know that it's out. It's been sent to the regional board. Yeah, it's on. It's been sent to the regional board.
Is it possible for you to just forward it to everybody here?
I can, yeah. I put a copy on my computer, so I can, yeah.
Okay,
Great.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
And it looks like we have some public comment.
Yeah. Mr. Chair, Rick Sauerwein, Capital Projects Manager with the city. I would just point out that report is available on the Regional Water Quality Control Board website.
Thank you. Central Coast Regional. Great. All right. Any other public comment on our updates? Seeing none, this is also just receive and consider. So we'll move on to C1, new business, and this is the status of the CEQA-NEPA consultant and review their scope and budget for comments by us.
Okay.
John.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. What I'd like to do is bring you up to date on where the CEQA-NEPA consulting selection process stands. At this point, just want to run through the recommendation. We recommend that you review and make comment and ultimately recommend that Environmental Science Associates, ESA, provide the CEQA-NEPA compliance services for the WRF program. The proposed contract is for $346,578.40, and it's within the preliminary cost assumptions made as part of the overall cost to implement the WRF program. As with other aspects of the program, the city is seeking grants and loans to offset a portion of these costs, and it's anticipated that that we'll move forward there, and that the current rate structure has increased that we've already gone through, or the rate study that's happened accounts for the work within the first phase of the program. So I want to go through very briefly on why we recommend ESA for this. We did put out an RFQ back in May and received 6 responses in July. The city and a panel, which included some of you, interviewed the 4 most qualified firms in late August. We felt that ESA, as a result, had the strongest team for a variety of reasons. Strong project management, excellent qualifications on water and wastewater projects. They were very focused in their answers to the interview questions, showing some pretty creative and practical applications of their own experience. They were clearly qualified to do the work. They also had a clear understanding of the CEQA Plus process, which was something that wasn't explicitly discussed in the RFP, but we wanted to see if anyone would pick up on that, and they did very well, actually, in that regard. And that will be a mechanism that will likely be used here. Excellent coastal permitting experience. They also had a very balanced project management team where they all worked together very well, and had a lot of familiarity with past work in Morro Bay. We felt it was a good group to work with based on their experience and their background and their specific technical abilities as a firm, and specifically the firm's principals and project manager. Today we have Tom Barnes here, who is the project director for ESA for this effort. So if you do have any technical questions, he's available to ask questions of him. So at this point, they did provide a work program. We worked with them over the last month to refine that work program, where we wanted them to focus a little bit more on certain issues than they originally guessed. Of course, anybody taking a first shot is just taking a guess, so we really worked very closely with them and now feel very comfortable that their scope is going to do what it needs to do here. It's going to have to, at the end of the day, look at the impacts of the whole program, meaning the facilities master plan efforts and the reclamation plan as well. So we're going to have to work with them very closely to make sure that they have all the information they need in the technical work that's already been done, so they don't duplicate those efforts, but use those efforts and be efficient about it. We're also going to work with them closely in coordinating with the Coastal Commission and other agencies as we go forward and make sure we capture all their concerns. One reason we liked ESA, they have not just good coastal chops, but excellent staff who has a lot of direct work and experience having worked with coastal before. But in this case, we want to use that experience strategically within the framework of the CEQA NEPA process. We don't see doing an end run or in any way. We see this as being a very integrated agency-to-agency relationship. So far, our relationship with them has been very good. They're going to look at the whole suite of issues, as you might imagine. Not every issue, but it's going to be refined to some extent through a scoping process, which we'll start conducting when we know a little bit better about what the project description will entail through the facilities master plan and through the reclamation plan. But having them on board now is going to be a big help, and it will help us to let them hit the ground running as we get closer to facility master plan being in a position to be analyzed. And with that, I'll open it for any questions for you, for either me or for Tom Barnes.
Okay. Dale, I'm picking on you. I'm starting down there. All right.
I just had one quick question, John, and I might display my environmental ignorance at this point. Is this the end-all document as far as is this the end-all environmental document for the entire project? I'm not just the plant itself, but getting the sewage to the plant, the outfall, and all other aspects.
Yeah, it's a great question. What you have to do under CEQA is look at the entirety of the project. And so that's not just building the thing. It's what happens to the old plant to some extent. It's routing the wastewater, the infrastructure, how it affects growth in terms of growth inducement, if any. Obviously, the on-site issues having to do with biology, cultural resources, and whatnot. But also, how does it affect short and long-term traffic in any way? Odor, visual, you name it. Yes, the idea is to cover the entirety of the project here. If for some reason the project changes over time, or the council wants to consider adding something that wasn't originally considered before, then we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. But this is not a piecemeal document in any way. So it needs to be a robust analysis, and we need to work very closely with them so they understand the whole of the project.
So as we understand the project today, that's what they are going to be looking at. And in the future, if for some reason the outfall changes or something else, you may have to bring either them or someone else on board to take a look at that point in time. Is that pretty much the gist? In
a nutshell, that's right. We want to, in fact, we want to capture everything that could conceivably happen in here within this document relative to the overall program, so we don't have to do that. Oh. But if some aspect of the program changed, we'd look at it and say, has this document covered that adequately? And if not, then we would probably have to work with them to make sure they analyze.
So there may be some alternatives as part of this document.
One of the aspects of a CEQA document is alternatives. So one of the things we do want to look at in some depth is we see the facility master plan as an opportunity there. They're looking at different alternative ways of putting together the facility. We see those as among the suite of options to be looked at in the CEQA NEPA document, and to look at the various merits one way or the other. There's also the requirement to look at what happens if you don't do anything, the no project alternative. And also it's an opportunity to look at some of the sites we've already looked at, in the sense that you do have to consider alternative sites. So it's our opportunity to really look again and see, all right, why are we looking at the site we're looking at now relative to the others? So yes, there's a wide range of things that need to happen in the alternatives.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, John, I noticed in your staff report under fiscal impact, you mentioned, as you just did, about the ratepayer increase that'll occur after phase one, and I would understand it to be phase one completion of the wastewater treatment plant, just that?
Correct.
So we're looking at something that's way off in the future, possibly.
Correct. I mean, we haven't crossed that bridge yet, but yes, this is accounted for within the first phase of the project. Yes.
And the thing I want to bring up is because right now we're in kind of a graduated rate schedule right now for phase one. Again, then there'll be a subsequent one later on. So since we're speaking of CEQA here, and we brought this up before, will there be any socio and economic impacts to, say, renters in this town? Will we be displacing people out of town because they can't afford the utility bill anymore as these things creep up? It wasn't mentioned in here that that's an item they'll speak to, but I see that as a potential impact.
Right, and it's a fair one. And the idea being, since we're looking at funding sources that likely will involve federal monies, that's what kicks in the state revolving fund being an example of that. That's one reason we have to look at the NEPA question. Under CEQA, you don't look at socioeconomic impacts, but under NEPA you do. Okay. And so we're in a position to have to look at those things.
One other thing is, and I went on District 5's website under transportation planning, and you mentioned in here about transportation traffic and impacts. It seems to me that they would prefer that there'd be a left-hand turn lane placed at that location, possibly with our project, and in doing so will cause widening of State Highway 41, which is a major undertaking in itself. Is that something that they would be looking at? I mean, it's in the website for Caltrans that must be done at that location.
We're going to look at that issue, among others that have to do with the traffic and the widening and whatever capital improvements are anticipated along 41. We do want to capture the entirety of what might need to occur. So a traffic study that goes with this will analyze those issues. Caltrans will obviously be involved with that.
Just one last question is that the EIR that was done for the project that was denied, does that have any relevance in what they might be doing now? Will they be referring back to it in some fashion?
There's a certain amount of relevance in the sense that you've got a firm that already knows the issues from a setting section around the project. But the projects are entirely different in the sense of site and facility planning. But that said, sure, that's one of the reasons we like ESA in this particular situation. They do hit the ground running with the running knowledge, but it's a different project. But obviously we're not going to just cut and paste what was done before. It's an entirely different analysis.
Okay. Valerie, any comments?
I guess just a general comment. Their budget has 34 hours for their cultural person. The city right now has a consultant on board that's basically did a walkover, a literature review, and has identified sensitive areas. So basically, that's your identification stage. That's not going to get you through the entire process, and because you still need to do evaluations and finding of effects, and those things, your effect assessment and your mitigation measures are going to need to be identified in your draft environmental document. So I guess what I'm concerned about is I think that our schedule, I'll say it again, is aggressive in regards to meeting the environmental timeline and the issues that are related to cultural resources. You bring up the Highway 41 left turn channelization at the actual site facility. There is an archaeological site that the highway bisects. So we know that, and that site has not been evaluated. So all these things are going to add time to it. Complying with AB 52, with the notice of preparation and contacting the Heritage Commission, getting the list, sending out notifications to Native Americans, that's a whole nother trajectory. Hopefully they can be all combined with the Section 106 process. But I am thinking that basically how ESA is looking at this, and rightly so, is that we will provide them with all the documents that they need to write their environmental document. That includes the completion of all the technical reports, and it's going to go beyond just this inventory phase that you're at right now. That would be my guess. And as well as the signed agreements that are going to be necessary between the SHPO, the Advisory Council, the participating Native Americans, and the city. And whoever is going to be our federal agents, the Regional Water Quality Control Board, they may sign those documents as well, whether it's a MOA or a programmatic agreement. But there's a lot of stuff that needs to get done in order for us to get to we have a fairly aggressive schedule in terms of when we're going to be completing this environmental document. And I guess that's just one of my concerns in regards to the schedule and what we're doing here. I have no qualms or whatever. I think I felt that ESA was definitely the best group, and they have a tremendous amount of experience preparing environmental documents in support of what we're trying to accomplish here. But I still question whether or not we can get through the 106 process in the environmental document timeframe. And so I guess I would recommend that you get on the city and Mike, you meet as soon as possible with your existing consultants that you have that are doing the cultural resource studies, and really have a heart-to-heart and hash out what are the issues here, and what does it mean to go through a National Register site, 10,000-year-old site that contains human remains. We also have a couple of sites that were never tested that are within the corridor. How can we avoid them? Maybe not, particularly if we're going to have to do that left turn pocket. And I can't speak for Caltrans, but I would think that they're going to probably ask you to do that. Anyway, so that's just my general concern. So.
Yeah, and it's a good point. One of the things that we do want to coordinate early on, outside of even the formal scoping process that you're alluding to as well, is working with ESA and Far Western in this case to figure out, divvying up who does what and how. I think our presumption with this scope is Far Western is doing a lot of the feet on the ground work that ESA is going to be informed by. But again, there's going to be a lot of things that we haven't anticipated that are going to come up in the scoping that we want to make sure we capture, and we will.
I think that in terms of the types of studies that are conducted when you initiate these cultural things, is that it's various steps, and basically you're in step 1 right now. You still have step 2, 3, 4 to go, and including the requirements under AB 52. And once you open that floodgate with the NOP, that's going to be eating up a lot of your consultant's time. And hopefully we can get the two together, the AB 52 and the 106 requirements, which a lot of agencies are doing, consolidating and working together on that. But to complete all those steps, it's not something that happens overnight, particularly if you have to do additional studies. Consultation is long and complicated, and various people are going to have various ideas. Unless you can come up with, you've got a plan right now that you can say, we're going to avoid all resources, then you're good to go. But this schedule seems maybe a little bit more manageable. But if we have to do additional work out there, the 106 documentations that you're going to have to repair, the consultations that you're going to have to engage with the State Office of Historic Preservation and the Advisory Council on Historic Preservation, because I'm assuming we're going to be federally funded. So we're not going to avoid 106, as well as the consultations that are going to be necessary under AB 52. So I want this to work. I want it all to work, and I will feel a lot better once you guys all go to the table and work out a plan how you're going to do it.
Well, let's hear from Mr. Barnes, because I'm taking...
Do you mind if I just
No,
step
please.
in? Valerie, I appreciate that. Tom Barnes at ESA, and very happy to be here and glad to be invited. Your comments are very well taken, and I think a schedule for the cultural resources component here is important up front. It's something we do a lot, and we recognize that Section 106 compliance is ultimately achieved after the environmental process is at the end. So we have time through the whole EIR. We don't have to get the 106 before the EIR has its process. So we can do a parallel course, and we should, and we will. And then AB 52 is before the NOP. But I think putting a nice, thoughtful cultural resources schedule together is a really good idea, and I appreciate you bringing it up. So I mean, we're here to talk about ideas of how to make this successful and permittable, and I'm really excited to get started. So,
thank you, Tom. Bill?
No, I just concur with Valerie. I think very well structured comment.
Okay. Moving to my right here, Barbara. Anything? Okay.
I'm just curious. Maybe this was in the schedule, but I didn't see it. When will the CEQA project alternatives be identified?
Tom Barnes again. The alternatives will be identified officially not until the EIR is the draft EIR is on the street. I think the NOP has the opportunity to outline alternatives if there are some that we've got in our sights or that we want the public to consider or the agencies to consider. If we get some comments in that initial scoping period about alternatives, then those get added as well. So the alternatives that we officially review in an EIR won't really be publicly available until that draft EIR hits the street for review. But at this point now, in terms of the design team and the process of alternatives that have been going on now for some time, there's a lot of information out there already, and there's a lot of choices that need to be made and that have been made and that the design team is doing right now. So. We'll have an opportunity to come back to this group for sure in the coming months and present alternatives as they're defined.
So, what's your preliminary assumption for a date?
For a list of alternatives, when the draft EIR is on the street is all I can really respond to that. I think that going back to maybe the design team and seeing what alternatives they're looking at now. And have available might be something we could do.
Yeah, and I think to add to that too, it's all going to dovetail when we know a little bit more in the facilities master plan. Once we get a better feel for that, which is to say late November into December, we'll be in a better position to sit down with ESA and start crafting these alternatives. We can talk about them conceptually now, but we don't know enough to make it meaningful yet. We want them to be able to start hitting the ground running on their analysis in our schedule. We're looking right at the beginning of the year, they're going to start working. So we do need to have a feel for those alternatives, but it is very true. We don't need to define those at the get-go because sometimes they shake out as the process goes along.
I was curious, what do you consider as with the components of an alternative? Are you talking about various alignments, project footprints, technologies? So I'm just curious, in this particular instance, what does an alternative consist of?
Could be any of those things, and it could be a combination of those things. I think what we want to do is really focus on things that feasibly could work and that we'd want to consider. I don't think we want to be doing theoretical constructs just for the sake of doing them. But if we're really debating about whether or not to include certain facilities in the master plan, but we're not sure because it might blow the budget on the project, but it may have some value because it solves some problem on water quality or something else, there's an alternative to consider. In terms of the alignment of how to get waste moved to the site and back, where the lift station might be, if we haven't settled on that. If, the timing is also another kind of issue. And there's other alternatives that relate to design visually and also technologically. So there's a whole suite of things, and we want to actually rely on Tom's expertise a little bit here too, and you may want to chime in here, but I think that's the concept. We don't know yet, but it captures everything you've just said.
Okay. Yeah, I'll just add to that that the CEQA alternative process is a guideline, a code-defined process, and it's really trying to identify alternatives that avoid the significant impacts of a proposed project. So it's really, those alternatives are essentially identified after you've analyzed your proposed project and seen that there are potentially significant impacts. What type of alternative could avoid that? And that would be either is that in the alignment? Is that about the traffic? Is it about the site location? Is it about the process? All of that can come to play, but CEQA really wants you to look at how to avoid significant impacts.
All right, thank you. Jenny, did you still have some more comments?
I just had two other comments. One is this sort of follows on what Richard had mentioned earlier. I know that we're not really including Cayucos in the analysis, but what if they decide to be a partner in this project? Wouldn't we be looking at additional capacity, and that would be factored into your analysis?
Yeah, I think that's a question more for us than for Tom. I think Tom's going to follow the lead of what we do, but sure, that's an issue, and right now it's a hypothetical issue, but it's very true. If Cayucos came back into the fold, we would have to account for that in the environmental work that's being done. We'd have to account for that in the design of the project as well. But we're not there quite yet. But sure, big question.
And in terms of the facility master plan, so the facility master plan in the appendix will include an analysis of the impact of Cayucos if they were to become a partner, kind of as a what-if scenario, what that would do to facility size and cost.
Okay, that's great. And then finally, you might be aware of this study, but I just wanted to give you a site. And again, I'll provide this information to Mike. But there was recently an ecological study for Morro Bay. This was done in 2010 by Aaron Sims for the estuary program. So you might want to look at that and build on that. That's it.
I got a couple of concerns. One of them is how are you doing your EIR, and how is that running in parallel with the need for the city to update their LCPs?
A good question. It's one of the things we thought about here. We know that the city is going to embark on that. One thing we've already done is we've worked with city staff, Scott Graham in particular, to as best as we can, understand what might happen as a result of that general plan, mostly in terms of the full growth of the expanded growth of the city, if any. And obviously, there's a lot to be figured out there if that happens. But what we want to make sure that we account for, and for that matter, that the LCP general plan update accounts for, is that the two projects are saying the same story, whatever it is.
Right.
So right now we haven't launched anybody on our CEQA process yet, but we're definitely tracking what's going to happen there. And we're going to be working in concert, and I can anticipate even having a workshop or two that connects this project with that project so we get that story clear so the two processes say the same thing. It's a very important question.
And then the other one, with regards to issues, years ago, and one of the letters from the Coastal Commission that they wanted to make sure that we were looking at some of the collection system lines, especially in North Morro Bay. Now, in 2007, the city had put out a letter to the public stating that the 6040 line, which is the Main Street line, is under capacity. Okay, so we already know we have a capacity issue there. Now we have a condition problem as well. There's a lot of exfiltration and infiltration during heavy weather events, which a lot of people are concerned regarding this El Nino coming, okay? So when you're looking at your draft EIR, are you encompassing, and if you do encompass that whole area, is that part of because the facilities master plan is pretty, site specific. Are you encompassing those areas as well?
I'll jump in on that one. Facility master plan is looking at the collection system improvements that would need to tie the new influent lift station, wherever it might be, into the collection system. So we don't know where that site is yet, but part of what we're working with the city on is to determine, which elements in the current master plan or the current CIP could be eliminated or replaced as part of this project, because we know we're going to move the influent lift station from where it precisely is right now, and we need to tie a collection system into it. So there'll be some of that as part of facility master plan, some collection system improvements, but it'll be limited to what we need to do to tie in the new lift station.
Yeah, but when you're looking at alternatives, okay, you have to do part of your alternative sites. One of the alternatives is Chevron going back, okay, especially if Cayucas doesn't want to get involved, or if they do want to get involved. But because I could see how you're looking at like maybe a lift station here or there, but this is all integrated around, like we're talking about all the way back to the Yerba Buena. And we have the city saying that they were going to upgrade that in 2008, and here we are 7 years later.
It all at the end of the day, from this project's perspective, again, CEQA requires the analysis of the whole of the project. If the whole of the project through the facility master plan involves some needed upgrades or facility improvements, we'll have to look at that.
Okay.
And in terms of alternatives and alternative sites, if as we go along we identify potential impacts that might be addressed through the use of an alternative site, we'll look at that. We're not there yet, but those are the questions in our head to determine what the scope is going to be.
Yes, go for it, Bill.
I hope I didn't understand this right, and it's maybe off track from what we're talking about, but did I hear from staff that in the facilities master plan that Black and Veatch is doing, that is scheduled to be on the street in January of 2016, you're going to require them to include Cayucas as a alternative in that facilities master's plan? Is that right?
Yes, it will be addressed in the appendix, what the impact would be on the facility if Cayucas was a partner.
How long is Morro Bay going to allow Cayucas to have options into this facility that we're planning? How long?
Well, the thing I could speak to is it really was, at the time that we approved the scope of work for Facility Master Plan, it was part of that approved scope of work that the impacts with and without Cayucas would be analyzed. So that is part of, I don't want to, correct me if I'm wrong, Rob, but I think that's part of council policy right now, is to analyze that as an alternative, but not as the primary project.
Also, council direction is to continue to include Cayucas as a potential partner as long as we can. The further we get down the road, the more it's going to cost them, though. So they're going to have to make a decision financially sooner rather than later. Once we begin construction, it's going to be very expensive for them to join us. If they choose earlier rather than later, it will cost them less. We have not heard anything like that from the sanitary district, that they are at all interested in pursuing a joint project at this point in time. They are wholeheartedly pursuing their own work effort in their own community.
Okay, any other comments? Oh.
Yeah, follow up on this coordination with the general plan LCP update. If the city wasn't undertaking this right now, would that be a problem for us in our project? In other words, we'd have to live by the current rules?
Well, I think what would happen if for example, if there was no LCP update and this project required some sort of general plan amendment to make it happen, then that would be part of the project, the general plan amendment, whatever it might be, to allow for this project to occur. The fact that they're happening simultaneously almost is in many respects fortuitous, because it allows both projects to account for the other at the same time.
Okay, thank you. Well, having been on the Planning Commission the first go around, I felt the ESA-ZRR was very well written, accessible to the public, and that's sometimes a challenge for EIR, so I'm excited to see that they're on board this time. And as you just mentioned, they're part of the general plan LCP discussions, and their work plan. They talk about being at the table and facilitating those meetings and efforts, as well as Coastal Commission coordination, which I don't think was part of the last work effort and is going to be critical moving forward successfully with this project. So I'm excited to see they're on board and building that into their budget as well. Do we have any public comment on this item? Okay, seeing none, you are seeking an endorsement of the contract from the advisory committee?
Correct. Recommendation to council, yes.
Okay.
I'll go ahead and make a motion to recommend approval to the city council on this item.
Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, then let's just do a voice vote here. All in favor of endorsing the... Do you have a question, Richard? I'm sorry. No? Okay. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right, motion passes unanimously. On to item D, committee member closing comments. Do we have any comments from committee members before we wrap up?
Are we going to get a little harder time on these meeting times and the technical workshops in a timely manner, so we know what we're doing and what time we're going to be supposed to be there?
Yes, we're working with the city manager on nailing down that first one on the 17th. I think the last schedule I saw was a 10 to 2 window, 10 to 3 window. So tentative plan was to have a 10 o'clock. It wasn't going to be me presenting 5 hours of slides. There'd be a 10 o'clock and then a repeat at 1 o'clock, so that we catch as many folks as we could on the 17th. Now, that was the last I saw, but we need to confirm that with the city manager. There'd been some back and forth emails on it, and we'll get those nailed down as quickly as we can.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Yep, go ahead.
Anyone else?
Okay, I'm looking at a July 15 schedule, better than the other one I was looking at, which was a March schedule. So the content of the final Master Reclamation Plan report, how is that going to be integrated into is it going to be part of the EIR? Because the dates don't jive.
Right. Yeah, that's correct. So the plan with the Master Reclamation Plan is, as we've known the whole time, as we've discussed, in order to get the plant constructed in 5 years, we're going to have a higher level of detail on some parts of that Phase 1 program than we are on the Phase 2. And so the Phase 2, which is really what comes out of the Master Reclamation Plan, might be addressed at more of a program level or broader alternatives than what's addressed for Phase 1 in the EIR. And there may be the need to do some supplemental, John, jump in.
Yeah.
There may be a need to do some supplemental environmental evaluation on the specific things coming out of that Master Reclamation Plan.
But
that makes sense.
This particular environmental document would refer to it.
Yeah, let me jump in.
I mean, I don't know how that wording is going to go. Promise us we're looking into it and we'll deal with it later. But what are some of the, are we going to disclose what are some of the potential reclamation things that we might do in the environmental document?
Sure.
Because the dates don't jive.
Right. Right. No, but it's a great question, and it's one that Mike and I actually want to talk with Tom about a little bit in some depth. But to me, the idea, we'll know great detail on facility master plan, and we'll know programmatic plus detail on the reclamation plan as the EIR is being written. Ideally, we capture the world of what could happen in terms of reclamation, in terms of potential impacts, even if we don't know specifically where it's going to go. Obviously, there's a little bit of an art to that. But we want to make sure that we anticipate what could occur so that when we finally do finalize that plan, the EIR has covered it. Now, if for some reason we've gone off the page and the reclamation plan ends up including things that weren't analyzed in the EIR, then we're in a position to have to do some supplemental work on that to cover that. But our intent is to try to capture what we can in as great a detail as we can and do it as programmatically as we need to with prescriptive mitigation measures and performance standards in the EIR on a programmatic level, and then see where the chips fall at that point. It's the best we could do given the schedule.
Paul.
Yeah, today I was on the city's website looking up our water reclamation facility. I noticed it hasn't been updated since August, and because of it, it obviously doesn't show that we now meet here on the first Tuesday, so I don't know if that's something that's going to be replaced with what Mike's going to do or what's going to happen. Also, again, surfing around, this slow span site doesn't archive our meetings, and I don't know why, but has all the other city meetings, but not ours. Just something I noticed today, that's all.
Not even in audio format? No, but it's on YouTube, isn't it, though?
The later one.
Yeah.
Not the early one.
Aren't we, though, now archived on YouTube via YouTube channel?
That's correct.
Okay. Bill, did you have some comments to make?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, do you mind if I take a couple minutes? I had got a tour of the Los Osos Water Reclamation Facility today, and it was given by a couple people, Rosalind Heslett from Sloco, and from that John Waddell made that possible, and then the site manager, construction manager, Steve Mimiaga, from Mimiaga Engineering Group. And maybe some of this group don't think it should be a model, but I'm telling you, I was impressed. And those guys are doing a good job. The scheduling completion is March 2016, and it's on schedule with 72% complete. They've spent $38 million of a budget for $48 million, which means there's a very high probability they're going to come in on schedule under budget. They have a zero discharge site. They coordinate with the Coastal Commission on all criteria. They have 13-acre footprint, and the engineer AE for the job is Carollo. Construction is an outfit from Sacramento called Auburn Constructors. They use P6 Primavera schedule control with critical path, each activity tied to one another, and they did not load their activities with dollars, but they assigned dollars to them later, and that's the way they make their progress payments. They are anticipating 6 full-time maintenance and operation employees. They have leach field ready for aquifer recharge and purple pipe water for ag and landscaping for the city, for Los Osos. The plant was designed for 0.7 MGD, and that will include all storm runoff on the site. Tours are available, and they are very receptive to tours, and I strongly recommend anyone from this committee that gets a chance to go, as well as the City Council.
Thank you. Any comments over here?
Yes, I just wanted to reiterate my request on the budgeting and financial summary, and part of my incentive for that is that I'm serving on the Citizens Finance Committee recently established, and I know there's a lot of visibility on this project. So, Mike, if I can help in any way in reviewing any docs or format or something to keep this high level and simple, but still be able to communicate to not only the committee but the public, I'll be glad to help you in any way.
Appreciate that. In fact, what I might do is draft one up and then send it to the Finance Committee to the Finance Committee of the Wharf for consideration. That'd be very helpful.
Okay, that'd be great. Thank you.
Any comments down here? Richard?
Let me clarify something. Los Osos, on the path getting to where they're at right now, spent millions of dollars, and there's a lot of people that were involved in that. Some people, there was a friend of ours, mine, she's no longer with us, Gwen Taylor, she called it economic cleansing is what they kind of felt that was going on there with the rate hikes and everything else. There was plenty of alternatives, small pipe, there was all these other things. There was a lot of talk. And then they were going to build a plant in the middle of town, and the people had to fight that. And it cost a lot of heartache over there. I feel that let me give you an analogy. This would be better. Years ago, there was a space shuttle site being built on Slick 6 in Vandenberg. And a company went over there and they built, I'm not even going to mention the company, but they built a vent stack for a hydrogen vent stack. They knew that hydrogen vent stack was too small. They knew because there was an oxygen dewar near there. It went through, it passed, and then, lo and behold, we got a vent stack too small. Here's a change order. That change order itself was more than the whole vent stack that it cost the vent stack. This is what I'm talking about this project. We know that this project we need to build big enough to handle the future. The future, not only growth, the future tourists, the future loads that we're looking at. We're not doing that right now. And when we don't do that, and then we're going to add something, and it's from an engineering standpoint, you have to have your parameters set. Once you have your parameters set, then you can design to your best ability. Our parameters should not be reclamation ready. Our parameters should be reclamation. There is a water issue here, and it should be focused on that, and our loads we know are undersized. We should estimate them, and then even a factor of safety there. And I feel that we are that it's a disservice to the community to even go and try to be, just do just enough for what's going on right now. Tertiary is right now we're running a plant 40 years out of compliance, and our existing wastewater treatment plant is reclamation ready. So we should be focused on looking ahead and going above and beyond what we think, and then we can get the right grants, and then we can get the money.
Thank you, Richard. Okay, with that, I don't see any other comments, so I'll close item D, move on to E, which is adjournment, and announce that we are going to meet here at the Vets Memorial Building, 209 Surf Street, on November 3rd, 2015.
What I'd like to, let me correct one thing. When we put the staff reports together, we had not nailed down Black and Veatch's availability for October 20th. So if you all would be willing to entertain the October 20th meeting, then the project manager from Black and Veatch will be here to present the facility master plan. And so we need to confirm availability of this room.
I'm pretty certain that it is available.
Right. But the plan would be 3 o'clock this room.
Oh, okay. And we'll see a
We'll
packet
need to confirm
prior.
that. There'll be a packet prior. That's correct.
Well, we'll just adjourn this meeting with no date in the future. Yeah.
Okay.
How's that?
Sounds good.
Let us know.
We'll let you know.
Okay, thank you.